Do it yourself. Alright guys, in this video we're going to be detailing how to be able to build this neck rest for a guitar player in general, but ultimately as a luthier, which is what I am. I went to school to be able to learn how to build lute instruments, which is anything with strings and frets. I went to Luthiers International in Georgia, and I'm even the author of Unlock Your Lute, which is a luthier's guide to fretboard mechanics. Now, being a luthier, I did not necessarily play banjo and ukulele and a few other instruments. I was specifically with guitar, but I had to be able to learn out of necessity how to piece all these instruments together. And from the guitar player's perspective, how to back engineer it into the ukulele and banjo, mandolin, etc. So, but anyways, all of that said, this neck rest can be used for banjos, ukuleles, mandolins, basses, and the like. However, this was a DIY project due to a guitar building clinic that I put together this summer for my students. Now, before, there were places such as Stuart McDonald, which this is actually a fret leveling file without the file fell off. Before there was Stuart McDonald, there was luthiers putting together their own tools and going to stores and taking files and rounding them over with grinders and things like that. So when I went to school, I learned how to build my own tools. These are examples of tools that I built almost 20 years ago at the school where I went to learn how to be able to build lute instruments. This tool would be for being able to put a radius in your frets, and this tool is putting a bevel on your frets off the neck and for being able to grind off the edges of the tang as well. So if you're interested in being able to purchase one of these neck rests from me, you can email me at unlockyourlute@gmail.com. And if you're interested in plans, you can check out our Patreon. I plan on having it up there as soon as possible. All right, enough talk. Let's do this. Okay, so this is going to be the basic plan. This is by no means to be super mega accurate, but it's just to show the concept. So what I did was that I got a 96-inch board or an 8-foot board. And what I did was that I equally measured out 6 inches and I did 16 pieces. Now, that right there is going to equal 96 inches exact. The problem is going to be blade thickness. So the blade thickness has to be taken into account. So everything is just under 6 inches. We're going to be taking these pieces and we're going to be making a semicircle for our neck rest. We're going to keep one of them exactly the same and then attach it with 3 screws at the bottom. Now, the thing that we have to watch out for is going to be, what are we going to put our neck on? And that is going to be a piece of cork that we're going to glue on the top. Now, the other thing is that we don't want any hard edges where the neck is going to be. So we're going to take a router and we are going to route the tops on both sides so that there is a curvature going downwards. And then when the neck rests on the cork, it actually has a slope and it does not make direct contact with the wood. All right, our first step is to be able to make our cuts. We're going to be cutting this just a little bit under 6 inches, and the reason for that is because of the fact that I need to be able to account for the blade thickness. All of that said, one thing that's going to help is to be able to make a stop back here. This stop is set up specifically to be able to reduce the amount of waste for what we're doing. So all of these cuts should equal out to this whole entire board. Put your hands on that one. Okay. Okay, so as you can see, after making all of my repetitive cuts off of the stop, all of my pieces are even. I will be cleaning this stuff up so it's not going to look all like this, but what we're looking to do is combine 2 of each of these pieces to create this this neck rest. Now, this is not fully done yet. This is just to give you an idea as to what it's going to look like. Now, everybody's situation is going to be different. However, for what I did was that I got an 8-foot 2x4 and I cut just under 6 inches to accommodate for the blade thickness, making it to where I was going to have 16 equal pieces, combining 2 of each of these pieces to make 8 neck rests. All right, so this is gonna be really rudimentary and some people might be cringing, but ultimately I do not have a drill press that I can use or a bandsaw. So what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna be using this hole saw bit here, which is 2 1/4. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually take this the actual bit that's supposed to be the pilot hole to keep things steady, and I'm actually going to run it even with this line here that basically cuts the board in half. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, but ultimately what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to be pretty light about it until you get a good solid grip in there, and then once it goes about halfway through, I'll flip it and do the same thing. Now, the measurement that I did use, because again, in keeping with trying to make sure, I took into account the blade thickness of the original cuts. Each of these is 5 7/8. Okay, so when you put that into fractions, it's 5.875. Divide that by 2 to be able to get the halfway point, and that is going to be 2.9375, which if you put it back into fractions, it's 2 15/16. And that looks like this right here. So these are all each 16ths. Here's 2, and it would be the last 16th right there that I've marked. So here we go. This can get really time consuming trying to measure this stuff out from measuring tape. So what I've done is I've done one of these blocks of wood, and then all I'm doing is I'm transferring this line directly over to give myself a rough estimate. That's what I'm doing. And so this will make short work of things so you don't have to sit down and do this like measuring for hours. So the main dilemma that you're gonna face is going to be, how do I see if this thing is in the way to be able to make sure that my drill bit is directly on top of this? Well, there are these 2 holes, and I've already tried to film it to see if the camera will film it, but you can't really see it. But as soon as you start to go fast, to the human eye, this starts to become like a window around it so you can actually see. So I can actually see pretty good, making sure that I'm directly dead centered on there. And you just go really light until you're right over the top of it, and you get a good grip. And if you notice, it is a straight shot all the way down. And the same thing applies for when you go this way. Now, when you go on the reverse side to avoid blowout, you got to make sure that not only are you straight down on the line, but you're also going to match up to the sides of your hole saw so that it does a clean cut. Like that. And nice clean cut. Make sure also, if you're going to be removing this, use a pair of channel locks, because the friction is going to make that metal extremely hot and will absolutely burn you. Okay, so notice that there is a little bit of an overlap, but not too much, not too bad. All you got to do is just make sure you sand that and clean it up. All right, so got my table router here. You want to go against the rotation of the blade, or else worst case scenario, get injured from either the blade or the actual material getting launched into your hand. You don't want that. So anyways, we're gonna go against the ball bearing here to be able to get our round over. And so what we have is the finalized product. It's roughed out. So ultimately what we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting the cork directly on top and gluing that down. And this is what is going to need to be cleaned up with sandpaper. What we want to do is we want to have rounded over edges here and on the bottom as well, just for aesthetic purposes, and also for just in case any instrument hits this, we want it to be smooth and nice. So I'm going to basically put a rounded over edge on both sides of the base. So this is what it's going to look like in the end, minusing out the cork board. And we're gonna go over where the screws go and everything. All right, so here are the tools that you're gonna need. You're gonna need cork board here. This is 4 millimeters thick. You're gonna need some scissors, a tape measure, pen and pencil, and possibly a razor blade. Make sure that it's extremely sharp if you're gonna do that, but I would recommend the scissors. So what I've done is I've taken essentially a piece of paper and I've measured from the edge of the round over here to the edge of the round over here, and it ends up at 1.25 inches. And then from here all the way rolling up here is about 3 inches. Now, technically with the paper, it's 3 inches comes up shy on the inside of this. However, with the 4mm cork board, it is going to run proud, or flush, I should say, to the edge of this. Now, you don't want it proud because you don't want to have it falling over. So you want it kind of something that looks like this. This is what the end product is going to be. So a little bit under, so that if you accidentally go this way, it doesn't flop it off. A couple of things. The razor blade is not just used for cutting. You're going to be using the razor blade for scoring the inside of this to create more surface area for the glue that you're going to use to adhere the cork board. Now, I've taken the template that I made and I've ran that all the way across, and I've used a pen. You're going to use scissors and you're going to cut it out. You're going to end up with this. Then from here, you're going to score the inside of this and run it evenly here from the edge of the roundover to the edge of the roundover, and glue it in place, and it should stay. It will adhere, and then you will have your guitar neck rest complete. To see what that's going to look like, here is an example. So that sits in here, and there is not going to be any guitar neck contact with any sharp or hard edges of your neck rest. Okay, so we're going to be using some E6000 Premium. It's industrial strength contact adhesive. It's going to be permanent, but it's also going to be flexible at the same time. So a couple of things, watch out, this stuff is noxious, so you're going to want to make sure you do this in either a well-ventilated area, or you got to wear a respirator, okay? So also another thing, you might want to either wear gloves and or be able to use a popsicle stick to be able to apply this. I'm actually going to use the actual container as my pencil, if you will, for tracing where it is that the cork is going to be adhered to. So the first step is that you're going to want to make sure that you come over here and you're going to want to score the area in which you're gluing the cork to, okay? And you're not going to just want to do one direction, you're going to want to do multiple directions, and this is just to increase the surface area for the glue to adhere to the wood and to the cork. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the glue and I'm going to outline the area in which the cork is going to go. I'm going to make sure I don't go over the top because there is going to be squeeze out. You're also going to want to be able to utilize some paper towel to be able to try to get rid of the squeeze out once the process is over. So that said, this is what it's going to look like right here so far. You're going to take your cork, you're going to put it in the area, and you're going to want to rock this back and forth to try to get as much of that glue to make contact with the cork and the wood. Okay, you're going to want to push on both sides to make sure that the glue adheres, and you can see that there's actually squeeze out happening around the edges. This is good, okay? And what that means is that it's going all the way to the edge. Now, if there is excess squeeze out, you can take your paper towel here and just wipe. In this case, I would actually leave it. However, when I'm doing the other ones, I've had excess squeeze out that has kind of started to run, and in which you would take one of these things and wipe it. Watch out that you don't get the adhesive on the actual cork on the top that will be making contact with the guitar. Okay, and last tip is this. I am using an 1.5 inch piece of PVC, and I just had it lying around. I'm putting it directly on the top of the cork board, and it is an exact fit, so it'll just kind of help keep the form as the glue dries. Okay, it's the next day. Let's take a look at this. First of all, these guys here, these PVC pieces were just put here to be able to keep the mold intact. And let's take a look at what we're looking for, what we want. So what we want is a good, solid connection between the wood and the cork. Now, if for some reason there is a gap, which some of these do, you can go in here and kind of shove some extra glue in there with a toothpick if you'd like. This right here, you can't really see in the camera, but I can see it. This is actually pretty good. There are some that do need some touch-ups, and that's just, again, so that it, this is just so that it just prolongs the life of it. But something like this right here, it's actually got pretty good solid surface area. It's bending down here because there's no squeeze out to add the support underneath the cork. And I am gonna go in here and put a little bit of extra glue in here. So if, say for instance, the way that this is operating here, it would do the same thing here if there was no squeeze out. So I'm gonna come in here and touch it up, and you should have, and same thing on this side, you can still see that there's some squeeze out here, but a piece of it doesn't. And I'm gonna put a little bit of extra glue in there for some support, just to make sure that it is a guaranteed guarantee of longevity for this thing.